Hey YouTube, welcome back. It's Friday Philosophy, and I'm coming to you tonight in 4K. Why? Because I can. But first, little housekeeping note. You see, tonight I've got a little different pipe going on here. This is a Ranger pipe from Big Ben. I picked this up off of pipesandcigars.com, but this was caught my eye as I was scrolling through their website a few weeks back, and I've been looking for something that's a little bit smaller, something that's a nice traveler, and this is a great little piece, at least for me. Kind of stylish, fits my mode anyway, and so I picked it up. But I've really been enjoying this for a couple of weeks. But I know the style, the size is pretty unique, so I wanted to make sure to let you know what I was smoking tonight. Also doing a little caramel apple pie blend that I purchased off the same website, but not the best I've ever had, but a nice for a relaxing evening. It'll work just fine. But I brought up the 4K thing. Um, my camera has the capabilities for 4K, obviously, or I wouldn't be able to do this. But it also brings up something else to me that's kind of interesting, and that is technology and what we've seen change over our lifetimes. Um, and any generation can say this of the things that they have seen change, but we're moving at a lightning pace right now. And it's really crazy to think back over the years at the changes I've seen. And I am not yet 40, but awful close. As I was growing up early on, we had the 8 tracks and we had the vinyl records and had the cassette tapes, which is what I did most of my growing on. Most of my music listening was on a Walkman with the crappy foam headphones that the foam would always tear or fall off. And then we move into CDs and then into MP3s and all that. Um, I learned to type on a word processor. That was our typing class, but I also had to practice at home on a manual typewriter. But by the time I was in high school, I worked for a summer and bought my first PC, which I kept with me, through the college days. And now, of course, that's pretty commonplace for everybody. But the one thing that I find really interesting about all of it is our society's dependence on that technology. Um, I think one thing that we all need to remember is that technology is still just a tool. It's not the solution. It's just a method or a tool for which we can maybe get to the solution a little faster. But I think all too often we're willing to defer to the technology as though it is more important to reaching the goal than actually us, the user, is. And cavemen developed tools. They developed or they learned how to light fires and whatever so that they could survive, and that was the one of the first indications of technological growth, I suppose. But it's just interesting to me that over the years how dependent we've become on the modern technology, and in particular the information technology. Uh, I very clearly remember life before social media and before email, even before cell phones. Remember when we had phones that were attached to the wall? Oh my gosh. You couldn't get 6 or 8 feet from the wall because that's where the phone was. And, youth today have no clue what that's about, and that's fine. That's part of the changing times. Um, But I think because of the convenience, it's become an extension of self. And that's the part that really kind of I find particularly troubling, I guess. You know, used to be we had an independence and we had to develop a self-reliance that is no longer necessary. And I think that's something that we're all going to miss at some point in our lives, is the ability to be self-sufficient or self-reliant, because finding solutions, finding answers, finding help is so much at our fingertips. And it's like I said a minute ago, I think that's maybe just a little bit troubling. I try to keep my reliance on technology to a minimum, which is also comical because I'm a graphic artist. I spend anywhere from 6 to 10 hours a day sitting behind a computer, moving shapes, creating things, playing with photos, all of that stuff. Editing videos, oddly enough. But, once I get away from the computer, I do my darndest to unplug. And I think, that's manifested itself in a couple of different ways. You can see the old style clock over my shoulder. I think that's why I started embracing some of the older gentlemanly arts, including, a nice glass of scotch, although this is the cheap stuff again tonight, and started smoking a pipe just to help slow me down and to break me away from the constant bombardment of information. And I'm sitting in my humble library here, which is filled with actual books. And I think I keep the books the way they are and where they are and at arm's length because they're not technology. It's a way to embrace a slower pace and a way to dial back from the flickering computer screen or the bright smartphone screen, tablet screen that we're all so accustomed to right now. I remember in high school, we were allowed to use the graphing calculator. I think it was by the time I was a senior and was in advanced level math. But before that, we had to learn the processes of, your sine, your cosine, tangent, all of that good stuff. We had to learn the process before we were allowed to simplify it using the technology. And I don't know if that's still the case, but it should be. I think we all need to learn how to crawl before we walk. But anymore, I feel like children, even infants and toddlers, are thrust into technology as an extension of self, and they aren't taught to be individuals or to learn how to problem solve before they learn how to use the technology. And one thing I can say about my growing up is my education in elementary and high school was riddled with problem solving techniques. We had to solve things. We had to think things through before we resulted to a Google search. And I just don't get the sense that it's that way anymore. And I'm sure you have all said we're witnessing the death of common sense. And I'm sure that's been happening. People have been saying that for 60 years or 100 years or whatever. But I think more than ever we actually are, because you don't have to think things through. You can advance to another place where that thinking has already been done for you. So all you have to do is Google it. All you have to do is search for it, and the answer's right there. And, I think we're seeing that manifest itself in another unique way, in that the instance of teenagers that aren't getting their driver's licenses. And you may ask, wonder how those two are interrelated. And I won't say it's a dependence on technology, but it's certainly a disinterest in self reliance and independence. You know, I can remember when I was 12 and 13 years old, I couldn't wait to turn 14 because I lived far enough, I was 10 miles from my school. So when I turned 14, I was able to drive. And that was the most liberating and exciting thing I can remember about my youth. Was, after passing my test, of course, but the first time I hopped in that car to drive to school on my own. And, that's a landmark event for most kids, at least kids that grew up, in the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s. And it's not that way anymore. And I think that is just such a bizarre change in perspective or in life. That was your first sign, I think, of becoming a man or becoming a young woman or whatever. It's a different time. And I'm not saying there's anything necessarily wrong with not getting your driver's license, but at the same time, by not doing so, you are now depending on someone else when you need transportation. And how do you get to your first job or your second job, or how do you get to and from school? You can't always rely on somebody being there to back you up. Similarly, when I was a freshman in college, my mother desperately wanted me to come home for the summers. And I had planned on it until late my freshman year, when I was afforded a job opportunity that paid pretty well, but it didn't allow me to move back home for the summer. And my mother was terribly disappointed, and, to a small degree I was too. I had looked forward to going back home for the summer. But to have an actual full-time job in my field of study and make, money that was survivable at the time was such an exhilarating thing. That was another one of those cutting the cord instances for me and for a lot of young adults. But it gave me that next level of independence. And similarly, graduating college, I went right into my first full-time job in my field, and it was fantastic. But my mom really wanted me back home. But that was no longer the place for me. I had developed, I had evolved, I had earned my independence. And now we read the stories about kids that are moving back home and staying with their parents, until they're in their late 20s or early 30s. And I understand the job market's tough. I am not insensitive to the fact that I was pretty fortunate to get the job that I got. But at the same time, I'm not so sure it's as much to do with the job market in a lot of cases as it is with the fight in the dog. And I think you've all heard that, it doesn't matter what size of dog is in the fight. It matters what size of fight is in the dog. And I think, we're training our youth, and even us as adults, I think we're getting softer too, to the degree where it's easier to depend on something or somebody else, and in this specific instance, technology, than it is to work to find the answers. Because it's just so easy to do it the other way. It's we're on a slippery slope, but again, this is one of the reasons, like I say, I enjoy sitting in my library on a Friday night, having a scotch, talking with you, and thinking about where we're doing things right, where we're doing things wrong. But ultimately, in this, as it relates to this conversation, staying away from technology, distancing from social media, because interpersonal communication is still the best, truest form of communication. Typing on a blog, typing on Facebook, typing on whatever social media site, you still don't get the connection. And I've developed some good friends through social media and through those typed conversations. But nothing beats the one on one of just sitting and relaxing with somebody and talking through the issues of the day, whatever they are. So, and I guess now I'm rambling a bit, but one other thing that I've done, and I continue to do, is unsubscribe from emails. There's nothing worse than checking your email in the morning and having 15 or 20 emails from this shopping center, this big box store, this online site. The ones that you frequent. You don't need their constant inundation of newsletters, e-newsletters. You know, that's another pitfall of the technology, is that we are so easy to reach and influence as a culture. But I have unsubscribed from almost every email newsletter that I get, even from sites that I purchase from regularly, because it's just something else to clutter our minds and our time. And, again, my ultimate goal is to find some peace in the world where we're not always bombarded with information and with clutter. And, I'd like to use times like this to help me meditate and focus on what's actually important, and try to maintain a healthy state of mind, even if it's through a couple of vices that maybe aren't the healthiest on the planet. And, another little tip, if you haven't done it, is to shut off the push notifications on your phone. I still have them for a couple of apps, but generally speaking, when my phone beeps or boops or makes whatever goofy noise the app has pre-selected for my phone, I will go in there and I will shut off the notifications. I don't want the app to control me. I want to control the app. And it's too easy, again, when that Facebook notification comes up. Oh, well, what did who say about this? Oh, well, I need to respond. No. I will check it when I am doggone good and ready. Right? I mean, isn't it that simple? But I think, their psychologists are starting to talk about cell phone addictions and social media addiction, and I think it's very real. It's easy to get caught up in that last conversation and want to go check on it. You know what? It's still going to be there later. Whatever was said 2 minutes ago is still going to be there 2 hours from now, when you actually have time and inclination to look. We've got such a short attention span and such a almost naive self-importance that what we say is important and relevant to the big picture, and it's really not. And I hope I'm not bursting any bubbles out there. If you're watching this, you probably already got a sense that the world is bigger than just you. But it's just, it's a bold new world, but the best thing, again, that I think we can do as individuals is to recognize that the technology is just a tool. It's not a solution. It's not the answer. We're the answer. We're the solution. Our ability to learn and adapt is what makes us great, not our ability to master the use of a Google search engine or, whatever social media application is out there. Um, Once again, though, it's been a wonderful Friday night. I hope you all have had a delightful week. I'm about ready to sign off for this evening. I apologize. It's only the first week of March, but I think allergies are already starting to flare up thanks to a mild and dry winter. Um, Fortunately, you didn't get to see me sneeze in 4K. I don't think any of us wants that, but I've certainly had some post-nasal drip going on. But whatever your thing is, I encourage you to find your space, find your time to be able to step back from the technology um, and enjoy being you or enjoy being with the ones you love, whatever that is. But, the technology is only going to get to be more invasive. And the sooner that we as individuals realize that the goal of it is ultimately to entrap us. And I don't mean that in a Terminator Skynet sense of the word, but technology is fueled by, you know, by financial growth, I suppose, in one sense. It's also, fueled by intelligent people who want to grow civilization, or there's a lot of noble purposes behind technology. I'm not going to be so bold as to say it's all about capitalism or making a buck, but every device that comes out is more user friendly. Why? Because they want you to use it more so that you become brand reliant or technology reliant. And again, the technology is a tool. It's not the solution. We're the solution. The smartphone's a tool. The computer's a tool. The video camera's a tool. And I find it oddly contradictory, of course, that I'm speaking to you through a social media site using a video camera, which I will have to take to my video editing software. But I recognize all of those as tools and not solutions. So anyway, hope that didn't get to be too much of a lecture for my Friday philosophy, but I'm going to kick back and enjoy the rest of my scotch, finish my pipe, and maybe even, well, I didn't make it to bed before midnight, but I blame the latest basketball game that went into overtime for that one. Hope you have a great night, and we'll see you next week.